Alright, this is Duckman here from the future. These are the tie rods that came out of this car. The tie rod ends in particular are really bad shape on these. The actual stub that sticks out of it is banging back and forth, which tells me that the ball that's inside of here is completely shot, or the retainer that holds it in is ruined. We're going to replace these. I didn't want to do this for this owner because there's no way I can get the alignment right on it with the tools that I have. I know there's ways you could draw lines on the pavement or get a tape measure under the car or do some stuff with that, and I don't want to get into that. I don't want to call this car properly aligned, and the reason for that is I'm not an alignment shop. I don't have a computer tool to align it and do this properly. So this is a very down and dirty way to get these tie rods replaced, to get the car safe enough to be able to take it to the alignment shop and have the tie rods and the alignment on the front end of this car adjusted properly. And again, I'm not going to do that. I mean, that's not what this video is about. This video is just how to replace these tie rod ends and how to get it safe enough to get you to the destination point. Your only first destination point should be the alignment shop. So again, I'm not the professional aligner on this car. I'm just the tie rod replacement man. So that's what this video is going to be about, how to replace these tie rods. If you like my videos, thumbs up right here. You know, give me a subscription. Click that little ringer dinger down there below and let me know that you're watching. I really do appreciate that. Post a comment. Let me know who you are. Introduce yourself. I want to know who's out there. So it'd be really great to know who's watching, and watch the video. Check it out. Thanks, guys. Okay, we're going to go with the assumption that you've got the front end of your car lifted already, that you've got jack stands under it to keep it secure, and that you've already got the wheels removed. Once you've gotten that far, we're going to go ahead and get a start right here on the driver's side. We're going to locate our tie rod end, and we're going to start taking off the nuts. They're all 19 millimeters, and these sometimes can be rusted on there pretty well. But for the most part, the nuts come off relatively easily. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up the nuts until they are almost completely off. A little more. These are lock nuts, by the way, so they pinch rather tight. So they're really tough to loosen by hand. Alright, we've got that set. Now we need a tie rod puller on there. Okay, this is a ball joint puller, and these are used for a lot of different things, but what they're really removed for is removing ball joints and tie rods, and in this case, you get it clasped around there kind of like that. Zoomy, there we go. And then the trick is, and this is great, you just keep tightening this until that tie rod actually pops right out. And there's a reason why I left that nut on there, and that's so I don't mess up the threads on the tie rod. Although it really shouldn't matter anyway, because on this car, they've already been chewed up so badly that the tie rod ends are getting replaced anyway. That's it. Pop, pop, pop music. That's it, and it's out. Nothing to it. Alright, the tie rod end on the passenger side over here actually has a cotter pin in it. Now, some of them come with lock nuts, and if they don't have a lock nut, they'll have a cotter pin. And that's what you found in this case. On the driver's side, it was actually just a regular lock nut. So, of course, we're going to have to push out that cotter pin, loosen that nut, and then pop off the ball joint on the end of the tie rod here. Yes, this is actually a ball joint also, but the tie rod end is what they properly call it, but we got to pop that off just the same. I hope this thing comes out. No, it's coming out. Okay, good. That released a lot easier and better than I expected it would. I figured we were going to have an issue there. Alright, with that off, this is going to be 19 millimeter, which is usually the correct measurement under here. Got a box end wrench. This is pretty bad shape. Of course, my arm is in the way. So you really can't see what I'm doing here. There it goes. Actually, wasn't that bad. It's just a very precarious angle. Actually, that nut's coming off even easier than I expected it to. I thought it was going to be really rusting and rotten and just impossible. Anyway, there it is. Put our tie rod removing tool on. I love that this is also a 19mm. Now, no, I did not remove that nut all the way. As you can see on the end there, it's unscrewed most of the way, so that way it's right to the end of the tie rod nut, or the end of the stud, I should say. So that way it gives the pin that goes through here that I'm screwing in a little valley to sit in, so they don't fall apart so easily. It also doesn't chew up the threads so much, so when you go to put it back together, it's a lot easier to work with. Alright, we've got that screwed on there tight. I could probably keep on screwing on it, but there's an easier way to work with this. This is going to let go with a lot of force when it finally does. Oh man, there's a lot of energy pent up in there right now. Alright, let me grab a ratchet and longer handle here. Many years of rust and neglect. This is just what happens to them. Yeah, did it come off? No, it did not. It just kind of squeezed itself off like a ping pong ball out of an Asian girl. Alright, making our next attempt. Might need to use a different tool on this if this doesn't get it. This is possibly the hardest one. Yeah, I didn't get it. Quite possibly the hardest one I've ever had to remove here. They usually come off after starting to tighten it a bit. Maybe wrap it with the hammer one time and pow, they usually come apart. This one's going to require a lot more effort and possibly a different tool. So let's see what else I've got in my bag of tricks here. Okay, making this try one more time here. I've got the let's see if it's stripping out the tool, and it's not. And that was it. That got it. Wowee. That took a lot of force. Okay, it looks like the nut here on the bottom got a little stripped out in this process. Apparently, the tools really chewed it up. We're going to vice grip shaft on here, and this is not the best way to do this, but this is just what I've been forced to do. But the problem is as I turn this nut, the entire ball joint's spinning around up inside the tie rod end, and that was from the puller chewing the nut up. There it is, it's off, and it's out finally. That's about damn time. That was actually really hard. Okay, good to go on that. We're actually doing a drop spindle kit on this this car. That will be in another video that's coming up. Just for now, we're going to do the tie rod ends because this is a separate process. Okay, now down under the hood here, this is where the gas tank normally lives. You don't have to remove the gas tank, but I did this for better video purposes. It's a whole lot easier to see what I'm doing. And for that matter, it's a whole lot easier to reach everything, but you can actually reach it from the driver's side wheel well. If you'd really like to get to these in here from underneath the driver's side wheel, what you want to do is turn your wheels to the passenger side. If you get your wheels turned to the passenger side, these tie rods here are going to go to the left, and that makes them easier to reach from inside the left side wheel well. But what I did is I've actually got the wheels pointing the other way so I can get to them from underneath the hood here where the fuel tank is normally located. And in this case, it's been removed just to make it easier to work on here and to try to get you a better video. Now, what I neglected to mention is that it's actually a very good idea to lubricate all of these nuts on all of your ball joints and tie rod ends and all that stuff with some penetrating oil before you ever go and get started. And it's a good idea because when you start unscrewing these things, it just makes it a whole lot easier. And I gotta say, I've been quite lucky in taking these off, because sometimes when you loosen these and you get to the end of the nut, what happens is instead of the nut continuing to turn and coming off, the whole damn ball joint will actually rotate in place, and that nut won't go anywhere. And then you actually have a bigger problem. Sometimes if you're going to replace the ball joint anyway, or if you're going to be replacing the tie rod end, sometimes you can actually push it up and put a vice grip on the lower end and then loosen it out and just remove it, because it doesn't really matter if you chew it up. But in this case, we're going to try to preserve everything that we've got just for demonstration purposes. Although in this case, we actually are going to be removing everything except for maybe the steering stabilizer that's here. The steering stabilizer, if it works fine, we're going to keep it. I'm going to work it in and out, and you'll know. If you wiggle it back and forth and there's a lot of resistance, it's working. If it goes in and out real easy, or if it just goes any one direction really easy, something's wrong with it. Now we're also going to have to remove the inner tie rods. And this one also has a castle nut on it with a cotter pin. Well, should have a cotter pin in it. It's actually, well, I don't know if you can see it, but it's not even there. So that's been missing probably for some time. This side has a nylon lock nut. So we're going to loosen up these nuts, and we're going to use the Jaws of Life, which actually worked quite well for me before on another bolt joint that was stuck. And I've had this for a while, but I've just never used it. And seeing as how the angle of how I need to attack this and the nut being on the top, this just makes sense. So that's what I'm going to use to pull these tie rods out of here. We also have to remove that nut, which attaches to the steering stabilizer. And, well, I don't think we have to remove that end. In fact, it would probably be a good time to replace the steering stabilizer now, but when we get this apart, we can test it. And, of course, my phone rings. Always rings when I'm in the middle of doing something. So we're going to pull that stuff apart next, but first we got to put this battery on charge because this camera's about to crap out. Starting with the steering stabilizer, which is actually a 17. This comes out first. Yeah, I can use a ratchet on these, but that kind of takes out the fun and the wonderful effects of the video. You guys are actually getting me to see doing this the old way that they would have done, and they were broke down on the side of the Autobahn. Jawohl, my Volkswagen ist kaputt. I am by the roadside, and I need help to fix this thing, and all I have is a 17mm wrench. Coming off pretty easy. Not too bad. Again, when you get these nuts off of here, you're going to want to put them in a safe place or you're not going to kick them all over. So I'm going to drop them into my magic hubcap, which is currently down in the spare tire area. Okay, now as I mentioned before, the crown nut on this tie rod end over here normally would have a cotter pin on it. In this case, it's missing. I don't know who, what, or why, but needless to say, it's not there. Now because I'm looking at the nut from the opposite direction, it's going to be righty-loosey. It is a 19, right? Why is that not... Oh, there it is. Actually, that sucker was loose. Dangerously loose. Wow. Okay. Now, we know we had a problem with the tie rods being extremely loose anyway, but the fact that this nut was coming off here and wasn't even tight, I mean, geez, it was about finger tight. I thought the wrench wasn't going on it, but no, the nut was actually just finger tight. That could have posed a pretty huge problem, and I would say if the stabilizer wasn't on it, it may have worked its way out. Oh boy. Okay, then this one. That actually turned kind of easy too, but this one is a lock nut. This one wouldn't normally back off on its own. Okay, let's see if they come up on their own. No, they're not. Okay, so what we need to do here is you need to use the jaws of life, which I was using before. These are actually quite convenient for the angle in which I'm attacking this. This just seems like the right way to pull a tie rod from the top, like this. Okay, getting ready to pop these guys. There's that. There's the ratchet on it. That was one. Alright, because we've already removed it from the outside, there's the entire tie rod. Now this is definitely the tool to use under here. I think from now on I'm always going to remove the gas tank and pop them off using that tool, not the other one that I used to use. This is just so much easier to work with. It also looks like it's 2-to-1 leverage on there. Well, maybe not 2-to-1, maybe 1.5 to 1. And the more leverage means it's easier for me to tighten this bolt. Come on, tie rod. There it is. Alright. We now have second tie rod freed, and you got to pull it right off the stabilizer there. Here's our other tie rod. Tie rods actually aren't in too bad a shape. I mean, they're kind of shitty rusty, but well, the rubber bushings in there are shot. Well, that's part of the tie rod end. That's not even part of the tie rod. I went online and I ordered 2 brand new tie rods. So these are ready to drop in place. Before we go and drop these in place, what we need to do is we need to get a measurement on this tie rod. And you want to go from the center of this circle to the center of this circle. And whatever that measurement is on here, you want to replicate that on the new one. Now when adjusting a tie rod, you don't just start spinning the tie rod end around. Now you absolutely don't want to do that. What you want to do is keep both tie rods in the position. In fact, you could even drop them into the car. And once they're in the car, you actually spin the center section, and that will make them longer or shorter accordingly. That's the proper way to do it. Because otherwise, if you start winding one of the ends, you're going to either wind or unwind one of the ends into an improper position, and then when you go to make an adjustment, it's probably going to come apart, or it's going to affect its strength and rigidity, because there's only so much threaded end that's put in here, and if you're at the very last few threads, it has more of a tendency to want to pull out, and you can actually damage a tie rod and, well, crash your car. So try to adjust them equally. Okay, I got 13.5 on the old one between dot to dot. So I'm going to drop this in place. Now the way I've always been taught is these nuts should appear on the inside. Now I could be wrong, so I'm going to check the manual after that, and if I'm wrong, I'm probably going to reverse the damn things. But the nuts should be in the center, and that's probably for the reasons of making it easier to reach from the inside of the vehicle through the spare tire well, just like this here, through the through the gas tank opening, like you see here. Now, before we make that measurement of 13.5 inches, we got to put the nuts on the bottom of the tie rod ends. And these are important. These must be tight before you start making that adjustment, otherwise they're going to slop around. And I got to put it on the outer tie rod end also. This is your outer tie rod end. It goes right into the arm on the spindle, just like that. Once you've got that into place, you put your nut on the bottom of it. And these guys you typically tighten down to about 22 foot-pounds. For now, we're just going to snug them up and torque everything towards the end here and make sure that it's all right. Alright, that one's in place. And I don't know if you can see the inner one from here. When I start to tighten it, my arm might be in the way. But for the best visual effect, let's go ahead and make that effort to see if you guys can see what I'm doing here. Put that right on there. Can't get a very good turn on that from this angle. There it is. Okay, we're going to come back around in a minute and torque these things, but I can already see that the front end is much tighter than it used to be. Now, to lengthen or shorten these guys, it's just a matter of spinning the actual tie rod right here. Let me get this nut spun. There we go. So you can lengthen or shorten these guys just by spinning the middle. Now I have to double check and get a measurement between the spindle mount here all the way back over to the steering box pitman arm, as they call it. Okay, we've got to drop this arm in. Okay, first we got to put our steering stabilizer, which actually appears to be just fine. It's really stiff, just like it's supposed to be. Slide this into the hole on the arm. And then drop it down to the pitman arm just like that. Now we can go and put our nut on the end here. Surprised there's no washer on there, but one didn't come off when I took it apart, so it's not going to get one when it goes back together. Put our nut here on the tie rod end, and then we've got to go around the outside, the other end of the tie rod, and put our nut on there too. Okay, we've got to put that outer tie rod end into position. And then we've got to put the nut on the bottom of it. Still need to tighten up the brake line on there. I forgot about that earlier. That's why it looks like it's twisted. It's really not. It just needs to be snugged up. Well, that's in our other video. Okay. Tighten up our nut on here. Good. We're going to come back and torque that. Alright, we can't forget, but we must torque down the tie rod bolt to 22 foot-pounds. Let's see, I haven't heard a click yet. There it is. That's it. 22 foot-pounds, and she's golden. With the wheels turned to the right, that will allow us to get to the tie rod ends that are on the pitman arm a whole lot easier. So we can get the torque wrench underneath there just like this, and we should be able to quite easily get them tightened up. That's it on the one. And two. And then we go around to the other side and do the same thing over here. That was it. Gonna tighten up this guy right here. And of course it's starting to rain. I'm trying to get this work done. That's the kind of crap it's been doing all week. There it is right there. Alright, we're going for that 13 3/8 measurement under here. Actually, this thing needs to be shortened a little bit. That's not a problem. These tie rods, you can grab them and spin them, and depending upon which way you turn it, it will lengthen or shorten the tie rod itself. I gotta shorten it a little bit more. Right there. That's where we want it. Once we've got that where it belongs, you want to take this nut that's right here. I'm looking to see if you can see that. There's a nut right here underneath the steering column. Alright, this nut right here. You want to tighten this nut. Oh, my phone fell through. How about that? You want to tighten that nut up against the rod, not against the end, but against the rod. Once you've got that snugged, you should be able to go around the other side, on the driver's side. And here's the clamp. Now this clamp should have a notch or something that it falls into when you snug it up. I'm not finding that on here for some reason. Oh, there it is. The bolt that you see in this clamp should sit in the little notch that's on this side over here. So get this aligned accordingly, just like that. And then we're just going to snug this up for the second. We'll get the final torque on it in a few. You might need 2 wrenches on this. Well, to my surprise, one wheel, there it is, it's spinning. Alright, got my other wrench, put that right on here. It's really hard to get a good angle on this while the camera's recording so you guys can see. Now I'm just trying to snug it up, I'm not going to torque it yet. That should get it. We're going to come back and torque that in just a minute. Alright, that nut that's on the end of the tie rod over here, we'll have to snug that up. Now we need to repeat the process over here and do the tie rod on the other end. Same thing, adjust the length and then lock it down. Now again, we're not aiming for perfection here. We're just trying to get it as close as possible to get this car safe to make it to the alignment shop, where they're going to do this professionally using computers and all the other stuff that they've got to make sure the alignment is proper. But you can't beat a computer alignment, you just can't. So that's what we're going to get here, is this thing adjusted as best we can, and then off to the alignment shop it goes. Okay, going for this tie rod measurement here, we're looking at 30 1/16 of an inch. And again, that's going from the center of that circle you see there to the opposite end center. So 30 1/8 inch is what we're measuring. Alright, this one needs a significant adjustment here. It needs to open up about 1.5 inches. So we need to widen that guy up a lot. So just start spinning this tie rod as it gets longer. If you adjust it the wrong way, of course, it'll get shorter. And this is great when these things are new. When they're old and rusty, and no such luck, they don't spin quite the same. Alright, I think we're almost to where we need to be. Toe out's looking a little wide here, so it's probably wrong. Let's go ahead and check and see what we got. Yep, still needs to go a little longer. Boy, these mosquitoes are just everywhere. When I opened up this hood earlier, they just flew everywhere. There had to have been 100 of them under there. Okay, checking tie rod end again. Looks right, 30 1/8 of an inch. Mosquitoes are everywhere, but they're not biting. That's really strange. Alright, all of our measurements look correct. Now we need to go ahead and, as I mentioned before, lock down this nut. This stops it all from spinning. Line that nut right up against the shaft of this. Gonna snug it just a little bit. That's gonna stop it from spinning. It lives right there. This is on the outside, on the passenger side. See if I can get this camera situated. There we go. Now I'll go around that side there and cinch that nut up. Now again, there's a little groove on this. The groove is on this side over here, and that's the side that that bolt is going to sit in when we got it in that location. So when it snugs up, it should sit on that right there. Put our wrenches on, snug away. Now we're not torquing this down yet. We're going to come back to this and torque it down later. Okay, we've got that all snugged up. Now we've got to come back and torque everything down. Remember those torque specs. We've got this little guy right here, needs to be torqued, the one on the end there. There's this nut, there's that nut, and then there's the two clamps that are on either end. I'm going to put all those torque specifications on this screen. That should give you everything you need to know. And that should just about cover it. That's how you install tie rods on here. Now I'm going to mention it again because there's going to be somebody out there that tells me I'm doing it wrong. But you have to, absolutely must, take this thing to an alignment shop and have it adjusted appropriately. Again, I am not an alignment professional. I'm not the guy that does this. I'm just replacing parts, and then the next guy gets the alignment. And it can't be done better than having it done with computers and all the toys that they use on that to make this proper. So, thumbs up if you like the video. Please subscribe, ring the little dingle belly down there to get updates every time I upload a new video. Please make a comment. You know, I want to see who's watching my videos. Go ahead and post up something, you know, even if you just say hello, you know, introduce yourself. I'm glad to have you, and I'm glad you're watching, so thanks guys.